The winds of change are blowing at Horsham HQ through no fault of Tzeentch. It seems that reforms are underway, and a new approach to communication with the community at large may yet be forthcoming. Will it last? Will it have any tangible impact on the quality of the series moving forward? I have absolutely no idea. The new DLC for Total War Warhammer 3, coming towards the end of 2024, has just been revealed, in what can only be considered a massive departure from how they typically unveil paid content. It's time to paint the town red. Let their lifeblood flow in rivers. Khorne, Greenskins, and the Ogre Kingdoms are on the docket next. They will be led by Uzul Skulltaker, Gorbad Ironclaw, and Mr. Maneater himself, all confirmed as new legendary lords, respectively. Quick aside, I'm probably never going to say Golg Maneater's full name, just because I don't want YouTube to randomly demonetize me while referencing British cigarettes or bundles of sticks. Believe me, similar things have happened to me before. There's that unit called a Black Hearse for the vampire accounts, but it's actually a coach, and somehow combining those two phrases together made YouTube think I was getting racial about sports or something. I have no freaking idea. Incredibly dumb. Anyway, as a result of this new format, our discussion today will be shaped a bit differently than the standard post-cinematic hype trailer. There is no trailer this time around. That will presumably still come 3 to 4 weeks before its release, but instead, we'll be using details from an internal interview with King Gabo, Rich Aldrich, Sean McDonald, and Victor Dosev as our outline and blueprint here. An interview that will be going live the same time as this video. In that interview, there is some really important information about the future of the Warhammer trilogy, and I'm happy to report pretty much all of it is very good news. We're talking about a heavier focus on Immortal Empires, on improving base game races, even when they're not included in paid content, hints towards future stuff regarding Slaanesh, the vampire counts, and Norska, and quite a few of the new units revealed in Rivers of Blood, as well as, of course, the legendary lords. Then we've got the simple fact they're sitting down to have a fireside chat with us and walk us through their design philosophy, concept art, and general approach to the game, which is a form of communication we have seen very sparingly really since the Rally Point series in Rome 2 days of yore. It has been a long time since this has been consistent, and we don't know that this will be consistent, but it looks like they're trying anyway to turn over a new leaf. It's what people have been asking for in terms of hearing from the devs, so it'll be interesting to see if that continues moving forward. Now, just to be clear, Rivers of Blood is not the official working title for this DLC. It may be the correct one, honestly. It sounds pretty damn good, but that is still yet to be revealed and could be anything from Mountains of Skulls to poops in our butts. I have no idea, but that's what I'm gonna call it until I'm told otherwise. Feel free to leave your own suggestions in the comment section down below. Let's jump right in. First off, it seems like the legend leaks regarding Warhammer 3 were pretty far off the mark, which of course calls into question much of the public discourse over the last 3 months. I'm not gonna do too much speculating on that front. I do think it's possible, given the switch up from their last info drop where Kratos simply stated very clearly they were moving away from Thrones of Decay style triple lord packs, yet are now doing it again, that they may have internally panicked a little bit at community backlash and decided to move some things around, had some stuff on the back burner and brought it up, just because they felt people knowing a next year plus worth of content might be detrimental to their bottom line for a multitude of reasons. And the fact that Rivers of Blood is coming probably in November or early December, instead of with a faster turnaround time, like I said they were shooting for in that last blog, only a few weeks after all the drama went down. I think there is some smoke there, but ultimately, I'm not sure it really matters. From this point forward, covering leaks without hard evidence is just going to be a fool's errand. If they can be demonstrably proved wrong once, none of them hold much weight until we have something tangible like screenshots or assets in the future, and so I don't think they're going to be worth making videos about in the long term. Speculation is one thing, never had any issues with that at all. Operating under the assumption that the leaks are true is another thing, and frankly, they are no longer credible. Let me be clear, Creative Assembly is not an incredibly agile company, going from, oh, there will never be a Khorne or a Slaanesh DLC, it'll be Ogres vs. Cathay, then another Cathay DLC directly after that, then Dogs of War, to Khorne, Greenskins, Ogres, because of some community teeth gnashing, seems fairly unlikely. They've had at least some of this lined up for a while, which means there's a very good chance the leaks never had any merit to them at all. But at the end of the day, we don't know. We can only operate on what we have, and what we have at the moment is that they're not doing what's in the leaks, so it is what it is. When it comes to Rivers of Blood, I would never have been able to predict this one, not in a million years. I've had a pretty damn good track record when it comes to predictions and speculation, but I'm quite happy I did not dive into that this time at all, because I think I would have been embarrassed. I would have gotten the races wrong, and even if I was spotted those beforehand, I probably would have gotten 2 out of the 3 lords wrong too. Gold Maneater, I would have got right, but I thought Arbol would be the DLC lord and Skulltaker would be the free lord, just like Tammy and Epidemius. Instead, it seems like those are going to be switched around, and there's no way in hell I would have picked Gorbad Ironclaw. For reasons we'll discuss a little bit later, that topic is going to be pretty interesting. On a surface level, my initial impression of Greenskins being included here was a bit disappointed, not going to lie. They've never really been one of my favorite races anyway, and frankly I think they've gotten a lot of love already. Not really missing much, and in a solid state on the campaign side and roster to boot. Maybe one of, if not the most complete rosters in the entire trilogy right now, but I think that's why they're being included here. Ogre campaign needs a top to bottom overhaul. They need a lot of work. The structure's there, the main framework with camps and big names and mercenary contracts and food is all there, but much of the implementation is suboptimal and quite frankly feels like a pre-order DLC, which unfortunately tends to mean lower quality than the Tomb King or Chaos Dwarf style race packs. And obviously their roster is one of the smallest and least complete in the trilogy right now, simply by nature of only ever having the one content drop, while many other races have had 2, 3, or 4. All that to say, ogres need a lot of loving. Khorne, on the other hand, is just fine on the campaign map and in terms of their roster. There's obvious changes and improvements that should happen with them, unholy manifestations and all that, but really the main thing they need right now is just start position and lord diversity, because at the moment all they have is Scarbrand. Thematically, even though there's no fierce lore rivalry here between lords who have a long and bitter history with each other, this matchup does make a lot of sense. Greenskins, ogres, and Khorne, all very violent factions, all about the Waaghs, the hordes, the massive aggression in melee combat, and mechanically, it gives CA the opportunity to focus on the campaign gameplay for ogres, who probably need help more than just about anyone else in the series. On the model side, it lets them focus on the big monsters for Khorne and ogres, and there are some pretty cool ones coming. Basically, Greenskins are a logical choice for this DLC, just because they're mostly done, and they don't require much in the way of campaign overhaul, so they'll nicely round out the pack, but from a business standpoint won't require the same level of investment on CA's part. I'm a bit skeptical of what units they could get that would truly be cool and add a lot to the game. Talk about that as well, but I think most of the financial backing, as it were, where CA really wants to spend their money here, will belong to the ogres first and Khorne second. Now, Gorbad Ironclaw is a weird choice to headline the Greenskins. I would have assumed Gorfang Rotgut or Snagla the Deaf Creeper would have been the shrooms in the spotlight for this one, but either way, I am glad an orc will be the lord this time around. Thematically, it works much better than a sneaky forest goblin would, and Gobos have already gotten tons of love in previous DLC, Skarsnik and Grom, of course, but it is a weird choice with Gorbad because of some heavy juxtapositions and arguably some anachronisms. His whole shtick is that 800 years ago, 8 centuries ago, around the year 1700 of the Imperial calendar, he led a Crumpen Waaagh through Blackfire Pass into the heart of the Empire during the Age of 3 Emperors, at a time where civil war had severely weakened the kingdoms of men. His hordes wiped Solon from the map, never to return, killing Emperor Sigismund in the Siege of Altdorf as he was torn apart by wyverns. They sacked Averland, they sacked Nuln, Averheim, and the Moot all along the way. One of, if not the most successful Waaghs in history, and almost brought the Empire entirely to its knees. But Gorbad was wounded by Runefang during that campaign, and it would not heal. By 1712, good 7 years into the conflict, their momentum dissipated, the army splintered into a bunch of smaller Greenskins tribes, and the Ironclaw was last seen in battle against the dwarves of Karak Varn. It is unknown if he lived or died in that battle, but it was 800 years ago. Now, can a Greenskins war boss live that long, physically, without his body breaking down? Possibly, maybe, I'm not sure. All I've ever heard on that particular topic is that orcs keep growing, especially war bosses, and I've never heard of any of them dying of cancer or old age claiming a greenskin. But if he doesn't make any appearances in the modern timeline, and I am not aware of him doing so in any capacity whatsoever, then my impression would be he's super freaking dead, because a war boss who isn't war bossing especially one that suffered a debilitating wound from a rune fang, just would not and could not survive in a culture that violent. He would be supplanted by the next biggest dickus. And I can't think of any Greenskins character in Warhammer lore ever who lives anywhere close to 1,000+ years. Now, this is not entirely without precedence. We've had Vlad von Karstein and Repants the Mayonnaise before, but Vlad is Vlad. He's a vampire. He's known for resurrecting. If he has his von Karstein ring, he can and will return. Please no one say Azhag, one of my biggest lore pet peeves that gets parroted a lot. He died in 2517 at the Battle of Osterwald. That is 15 years after the start date of the campaign. There's no anachronism there. Repents is probably the closest to this weird scenario, and really the only example I can think of where this has been done in the past, where CA picked a lord who really should be dead and made them a legendary lord. Realistically, Repents should be long dead, blessed by the lady or not. 500 years is just way too long for even godlike humans to live, and she is not quite godlike. She's more like a saint. She is not Lord Commander Dante of the Blood Angels. So I would personally argue that Gorfang Rotgut the Troll Eater would have been the better choice here as ruler of Black Crag, a creature who has a fierce rivalry in the modern timeline with King Khazad-dûr Dragonslayer, and Thorgrim Grudgebearer, and Queek Headtaker, and all those characters over there near Black Crag, and is inextricably tied to the War for the World's Edge Mountains. But Gorbad Ironclaw is quite literally the first legendary lord choice in the Orcs and Combos 8th edition army book, a character that kind of breaks convention because there really aren't many, if any, other characters in any other 8th edition army book that are like him. Basically characters that should be dead, that are playable. So it's not like this choice is entirely out of left field, but I do find it interesting. He rides the unique warboar Narla, known far and wide for her extreme size, aggressiveness, and flatulence, while wielding the Mangler, a magic axe that bypasses any and all armor saves and hits like a goddamn thunderclap. Like Azhag, he is an incredibly cunning and competent battlefield commander with an exceptional mind for warfare, tactics, and strategy, but his focus would be on big guns, and those are the characters that he'd be buffing up the most in-game, or units rather. In terms of the missing units overall, there's not a whole lot to be done thematically, but that's probably true for Khorne and the Ogres as well. The tabletop units tied to each lord are already in the game for the most part, and in the case of the Greenskins, there aren't many stones left unturned anyway. Colossal and Mangler Swigs, Big Stabbas, and Spear Throwers renamed to be something probably a bit less problematic would probably all be in. And I mean, what could be more hilarious than seeing two orcs carry around a giant unwieldy spear and use it like a battering ram? That's gonna be pretty funny. Combine that with Black Orcs finally getting their Armed to the Teeth special rule, swapping between shields and great weapons depending on the situation, and I think all will be well on the Greenskins side. Now, before we get into Khorne and the Ogre Kingdoms, the devs hint heavily at the vampire counts, Norska, and Slaanesh getting more content in the future as well, which is a really good sign, because combined with Rivers of Blood, that basically just leaves Midland, Skaven, and the End Times as the stuff needed to truly put a capstone on this trilogy. We are not far off. I think that is very achievable in a 2 to 3 year time frame, which is about how much support I'm expecting Total War Warhammer 3 to have. And the fact that they're aware and actively talking about that is a really good sign. They also talk about how this next DLC will be entirely Immortal Empires focused, and that while Realms of Chaos will still receive updates and is not being abandoned, it may not receive additional DLC content moving forward. Which, if you're a fan of that campaign, totally understand and empathize, this will not sound like good news for you, but the trade-off here is that while they will continue to bug fix and update for it, without making new lore packs built around Realms of Chaos, they can then put more emphasis on the combined campaign and bring base game races up to speed, even those that aren't tied to those DLCs. That part, in my opinion, is very good news, because like a lot of you, I think Immortal Empires is more important than Realms of Chaos, and ensuring parity between older base game races like the Vampire Counts and newer races like Cathay or Chaos Dwarfs is a huge component of making this whole thing a cohesive, fun experience. If you're a fan of a particular race, it is not fun to see them languish and fall well behind, and there are a few races right now that are like that. Norska is one. Vampire Counts haven't gotten an update in what, like 5 years, and they only got the one DLC, the very first one, Grim in the Grave. So yeah, they need some stuff. They have some iconic characters. They need some loving. Working harder on those elements of bringing those base game races up to speed through free LC content can only be seen as a good thing. So, when it comes to Khorne, Uzul Skulltaker, champion of the Blood God and one of the fiercest duelists in Warhammer history, will be the headlining lord. He is the Herald of Khorne, the Epidemius and Mask equivalent, greatest of Karnath's chosen bloodletters, and Bretonnian castles, ogre feast halls, elf mansions, Nehekar necropolises, and dwarf hold have all played host and been paid his haunting visits over the millennia, whereupon he challenges the greatest of their number, sears the flesh from their skulls, then twists it off their spine in honor of his deity. Only Sigmar Heldenhammer is said to have defeated the Skulltaker in single combat, and it took him 3 days to do so. In battle, he rides a unique juggernaut, but will probably have cooler animations on foot, and his weapon skill, melee attack, and heroic killing blow slayer sword will make him a fearsome duelist. The free LC coming alongside is confirmed to be Khornate as well, and though it has not yet been revealed, I would bet many dollary dues that Arbal the Undefeated will be in that slot atop his Fleshhound of Khorne. So really, I just had those two characters reversed. I thought Arbal would be DLC and Uzul free LC. Instead, it seems like it will be the opposite. Either way, it doesn't matter much. It seems like we're getting both. That means Scylla Ingfengrim, the Red Rage Gorilla, as a legendary hero, Khorne Gors, a Juggernaut Chariot of Khorne, the mighty Slaughterbrute, Brass Sisters, and possibly a Khornate Priest hero or Bloodfather Lord that don't wield magic per se, but buff troops through sacrifice and carnage could also be included. Of those missing units, only the Slaughterbrute is confirmed thus far. They'll talk about that in the interview. Super cool unit, frenzied melee monster that's bound to a lord or hero and takes on their combat profile in a kind of mind meld. Essentially meaning that without those runes of binding, it's just a rampaging behemoth monster with huge weapon strength and kinda underwhelming stats, but when properly united with a host controller, becomes frighteningly adept at attacking and defending. So for example, if you are a Khornate Lord on a Blood Crusher, you could imbue your own stat line into that Slaughterbrute and make it better where it would typically be worse. Morale being a prime example, melee attack being another. Will basically look like a Khornate version of the Mutaleth Vortex Beast, a gigantic freaking monster. I do not expect Skull Reapers or Wrathmongers in this particular pack. I think those will be saved for an End Times expansion if and when it comes, because that is when they were introduced. They are an End Times unit. That's the same thing as like the Putrid Blight Kings, that sort of thing. Which leaves us with the Ogre Kingdoms. So far, everything explicitly confirmed for the Ogres is the Thundertusk monster, Blood Vultures, and of course the meat of the hour, Mr. Golg Maneater. Some people may have preferred to see Gorbad Ironclaw in that Lord slot. I may be counted amongst their number, because seeing a giant armored beast on a mechanical demon Rhinox would have been freaking awesome. But the Maneater is a very well-known and legendary character with many appearances throughout the Black Library over the years, and could potentially come with an overhaul to Maneaters themselves. As you may know, they are elite ogre mercenaries who tend to take the form and equipment of whichever land they served in, so Nipponese Maneaters would dress and fight like Eshin ninjas, using stealth, shurikens, smoke bombs, and tanto in CQB, while a Sartosan pirate Maneater would fight like the gunpowder elements we already have in-game. Flintlock pistol, scimitar, that kind of thing. Arabian Maneaters would have scimitars and fight like whirling dervishes. Basically, there's a million different things that they could go after here. I'm not truly expecting it, but an in-depth Maneater customization feature would be an incredible addition, or at least could be, because there's almost limitless creativity CA could employ in a system like that done well. So many different kingdoms, weapons, and equipment Ogre Maneaters could use, and it would add a ton of flavor to the roster. But much more important is fixing Ogre camps so they can pack up and move location, of making mercenary contracts actually worth doing, because at least at launch they really paid absolutely abysmally, of making big names truly impactful. As I said earlier, all the mechanics are already there, they just aren't there numerically or implemented very well in their current form. It's like the farter trait where it gives your lord 5% extra speed. Wow, super cool. Went from 45 speed to 48 movement. Like, truly impressive. Gameplay defining big name there, boys. Thank you. But yeah, really excited for the Thundertusk. It's basically a mobile artillery platform monster that can spew spheres of ice at opponents. Really cool model. Ogre Rider just sits on top of it and blasts opponents with harpoons and deadly hunting contraptions from above. Blood Vultures are interesting. They did not have their own unit in 8th edition, but instead were an upgrade for Ogre Hunters. They're large predatory birds that dive bomb opponents and will serve as probably like higher tier carrion, backline harassers, maybe in the 400 to 600 gold range. Expect to see Yetis with high speed and magic attacks, similar in profile to Gorgers, and maybe some scythe-wielding monstrous cavalry variants too, that were available on the tabletop, but for some reason, those weapon variants never made the jump into Total War. Maybe a few Noblar pigback variants battered throughout to give the Noblars a bit more representation too. For legendary heroes, we might very well get Bragg the Gutsman, the Slim Reaper of the Ogre tribes, known for carving out ogre bellies over the top of their gut plate with his Morning Scythe. And as for Golg Maneater, well, the dude's a legend. He's the Captain Jack Sparrow of Great Maw kind, the Dos Equis most interesting ogre in the world. Honored personally by Karl Franz, he has looted the treasure troves of Ulthuan, raided Bugman's stores of Triple X Brew, escaped the clutches of Skaven Blight, and won and lost more gold than there are Noblars in the hills. He can wield an absolutely insane assortment of weapons and artifacts from his travels abroad, and naturally would turn Maneaters into absolute powerhouses. So a very worthy legendary lord with a unique theme. Overall, lots of fantastic news here. Haven't actually seen the dev interview yet. We were not preceded that video to watch, just given some basic info about what would be included. So if there's a lot more juicy tidbits and concept art, I may yet make a follow-up video, but that is the basic gist of what you should expect in this Greenskins Ogres Khorne DLC coming later this year. I think we'll dive more heavily into it in the coming days and weeks, get a bit more specific on details and how the mechanics might take shape, but a lot of good news here, not just for those three, but for the other older races as well, and a bunch to be excited for as we move into the end game for Warhammer 3. Let me know what y'all think, and I'll see you all in the next video. Indy Prime, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.